What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I want to break down what's happening with the economic calendar moving forward, what's going on with other stocks involved in the markets, what you should be watching for as time progresses. But before I begin to divulge information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo and deposit $100, you are guaranteed 7 free stocks, and the offer ends in just a couple of weeks. Anyways, looking at SPY right now, the charts are looking a bit more bullish as we're seeing this thing breaking through these highs and holding up very well, especially after some very, very key data developments. But the question is, can we break some key resistance and go higher? In my personal opinion, although the odds favor that, I want to go over some news first, talk about some data before I break down these charts. So, firstly, do not forget that tomorrow is going to be Monday, May 6th, 2024. At 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, a couple of hours after the market opens, we have the 3-month and 6-month bill auctions coming out. This might cause some volatility in the markets. Then at 12:50 p.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have Barkin and Williams from the Fed giving their speeches, which could also cause some volatility. Now, much of the data this week is kind of minor. We don't have too much coming out, at least for the majority of the days. But by the week after this week, so as we get into like the mid-May period, that's when we have lots of important pieces of data like PPI and CPI. But for now, this week is going to be less intense in terms of data. Now, for other things that are coming out, I just want to mention that right now the market is still fearful. We're getting very close to neutral as we're starting to see more buyers stepping in and defending their positions. Market momentum is currently at greed as we're seeing buyers defending and pushing SPX and these other indices even higher. And we're starting to see buyers defending as we're holding above our key moving averages. On top of all of that, we also have the put and call options positioning continuing to dip. So this suggests that we're continuing to see puts being closed, more options being bought, and long positions being held because of hedging. So this is what's leading to the market holding up very, very well. Now, despite the fact that we're seeing this, I want to make it very clear that yes, the market has more potential, but don't forget that the VIX is entering some critical territory. We're getting closer to that. So to me, it looks like the VIX is also kind of neutral. We're also dipping closer to the greedy area as we're slowly dipping. And I see more downside potential in the VIX, which suggests that that's going to be because of the market pushing more. But don't forget, we're approaching some key support. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And that's going to be very, very key for the way the market will end up moving. So I'll be watching for this very, very carefully. We'll see what the VIX ends up doing. For earnings that are coming out, just as a reminder, we have more details on Berkshire Hathaway coming out for tomorrow, not to mention Spirit and a few others. And after the market closes, we have Palantir, Lucid, and a couple more coming out. For Tuesday, we have Disney, not to mention Lyft and Rivian. For Wednesday, we have Uber, Shopify, and a few others. And then for the rest of the days, everything else is kind of minor. So this is what the earnings calendar looks like. You guys are free to take a screenshot if you are interested in this. And then moving forward, there was some news that came out with Berkshire Hathaway. I think more details will come out tomorrow about this, but so far the operating earnings have soared 39% as Buffett's cash hoard has swelled to a record $188 billion. So we're starting to see more cash being held by Berkshire Hathaway. On top of this, and that's despite the fact that those changes have perpetuated, we're also starting to see once again some very, very nice looking operating profits that are continuing to grow for them. Not too bad overall, with insurance investments going up about 32%, more than $2.5 billion. So not bad for them so far. We're going to be looking at more details tomorrow once we start to see specific details about earnings and such. But so far, things are looking pretty good for them for their investments, and not bad in my personal opinion. But there was news about them selling a part of their Aapl stake before they ended up before they ended up announcing their buyback and such. So that was a little bit more negative, not to mention their loss on Paramount. But despite that, their overall growth is still strong, and their record cash hoard is, I would say, in the middle. Could you say it's concerning? Possibly. Could Warren Buffett be expecting something very big to happen in the economy? Sure. But don't forget that, if the market does get those dips, we will see him continuing to buy things up and remain at ease. So not the end of the world, guys. Don't worry too much about this. This has been going on for a while, despite the fact that the market has been continuing to push, and we'll see how things change moving forward. Now, I also want to call out that there are some tensions going on around the world. Once again, I'm not going to talk about who started what or anything like that, but I'm going to be continuing to monitor the situation. I personally just want peace, and with all of this going on, I'm just going to watch and see if anything continues to escalate. So far, things are not that insane. Market is still holding up very, very well, so it might not affect the market much for now. But just in case, I'll keep that in the back of my mind, just in case anything happens around the world. So it's something I just wanted to mention. Anyways, moving forward, Let's talk about SPY and the others. How are things looking in my personal opinion? I'm going to go over the bullish cases, the bearish cases, and what I think is more probable just to be as accurate as possible and to give you guys a more comprehensive understanding of how things are looking. So, once again, the chart looks bullish, by the way. If we break 512.5, we could easily get very close to 515. If we're bearish, you want to see this reject at 512.5 and start dipping to 510, and eventually lower levels such as the 507 area. But in my personal opinion, we have this uptrend being established. And if we break past 512.5, we could easily push up towards 515, in my opinion. And looking at the 4 hour time frame, we are looking a bit more bullish as we're pushing not only in the after hours, but we're starting to see buyers defending and a big switch in the order flow. On top of this, when you look at the daily time frame, the daily is also looking decent overall. I do see some more potential for us to fill this imbalance right here. There also happens to be a gap right here in the 515 area. So I do see potential for this to go higher. I do believe that we could continue to push. One reason why I say that is what I talked about the VIX in my weekend video on Saturday. When you look at the VIX on the daily, it looks very weak right now. And we have this gap to fill all the way down in the 12s. So it looks to me like the VIX is going to get dragged down to the 12s because of possibly the market pushing a bit higher. But don't forget, every time the VIX hits the 12 range, we do see a big bounce in the VIX. So the VIX will bounce eventually, the market will reject eventually. So, like I said in my earlier videos, the market could go higher. The market's going to likely try to go higher for now, but it's not going to last forever. There will be a rejection coming later on, most likely. Okay, so I want to be as blunt as possible. That's what I see so far. We're not too worried about the rejection. For now, we're just going to be looking at how high SPY goes. I see potential for us to go all the way up to about 515 is the most likely possibility. Breaking that opens the door all the way up towards 518. That is also a possibility. Well, we have this 516.8 area, then we have 518 above that, but there's still upside potential nonetheless, and I still see potential in the chart. So that's what I'm essentially seeing, at least for SPY. Looking at Tesla, Tesla's very indecisive. It's been stuck in this range for quite some time, but the question is, can Tesla break out or not? So here's what I'm seeing. So I'm going to tell you what's more likely in just a minute, but let me make it very clear that if Tesla's bullish, you want to see this break past 182, hold above that, we could see 185 coming. 185 is going to be our next target, the entire zone. If we're bearish, you want to see Tesla reject, lose 180 and come down to 178, and eventually the 175 area. Losing that would take us all the way down to the 172s. Now, one thing worth noting is that Tesla has a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure. We have a left shoulder here, we have a head down here, and we have a right shoulder right over here also forming. This suggests that there is a possibility Tesla will see buyers defend us, but just know that it also depends on the range we're in, because the range will determine what the bigger move is. Tesla's heavily dictated by news, so whatever news comes out tomorrow could also affect us, so always be prepared for anything. But from a technical standpoint, it's looking to me like investors kind of dip this to start buying up off this hold of the 200 EMA. So they dipped it because they're getting ready for a potential push higher. That's what it looks a little bit more probable to me, that Tesla's going to try to be making a move to at least 185 again, and maybe even higher if we do break that. So I do see potential in the chart. So that's a bit more probable from a technical standpoint. I do think that's more probable, but just to be safe, always remember the news will affect Tesla, and you have to be very open-minded with this stock because it's very tricky sometimes. But to me, it looks like it might dip a bit tomorrow, shuffle a little bit, then eventually try to push higher towards 186, if not a little bit higher. If we break that, 188 could be coming, so that's looking a bit more probable to me. For the triple Q, I'm seeing something very similar. We got a nice little breakout right over here. We broke past the resistance at this 433 area, and we invalidated this head and shoulders like structure. With that happening, we're at resistance now, very close to this 436 area. I have the zone marked right over here. Breaking through the 436.5 to 437 area opens the doors for us to get very close to about 440, and I see potential in the QQQ to do so. If we reject, watch 435. If we lose that, there's going to be 433, then eventually 431 coming, but I favor that this is going to try to push higher towards 437, eventually break out towards 440. I see more potential in the QQQ to do so. On top of this, we have Nvda. Nvda is looking pretty darn good to me. We could ignore everything and just look at this. This is looking bullish. You could see how we had this low down here established at 755, came up, made a higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low. Then we broke this structure right over here. You can see it's trying to break the structure, and I see potential for this to go, excuse me, all the way up towards 900. I see potential in Nvidia to do so. Nvidia might start off with a little bit of a dip, though. There could be a little dip coming to Nvidia, a retest of the 880 area before it continues higher, and it could just get very close to 900 from there. So I see potential in Nvidia. I think it's very probable it's going to end up pulling that off. So Nvidia has potential. So does Tesla, in my opinion. So does SPY and the QQQ. How about Aapl? Apple, guys, I'm kind of in the middle because there was news about Berkshire Hathaway cutting its stake a little bit, but it's still holding up very well. So I wouldn't be surprised if we actually dip a little bit. We test 182.5 or something, we go a little lower, then come back up and get bought back up towards the mid 180s, come back down, just continue to trade sideways. So I think we're going to see a lot of sideways range bound price action on Apple unless we get a new piece of news. But I favor that because of the news that came out involving Berkshire Hathaway and the technicals right here. That we had lots of strong bullish momentum as we were pushing up to like 187. Now it's kind of slowing a little bit, so it might try to like pop and drop a little bit lower, grab liquidity in the 182s, trade sideways for some time. So I might see some sideways price action in this range for Apple, at least for the time being. It could try to break out towards the end of the day, though. It could get a bounce towards the end if the market does push higher. But let me just make it clear that I wouldn't be surprised if we get a little initial dip first because of the news that came out. With that being said, guys, let's talk about some more tickers. What do I see on these charts? What's going on with Palantir and the others? I went over the main five like very, very quickly and in depth. Now I want to be like more brief about the rest of these. So for Palantir, it's looking more bullish to me. We got a nice little breakout. We broke this resistance at 23. We're going to be looking for a move all the way up towards higher levels. We're also approaching earnings for Palantir, so it tends to see more volatility during these times, and the chart looks a bit more bullish. We're going to be looking for a push for 23.75 and eventually the 24.25 area. But I see more upside potential for Palantir. For Super Micro, this is also looking pretty good in my personal opinion. We have resistance right over here at 800. Basically, it's the 800 area. We have support at this 754 area. It's starting to turn a little bit. We do have this resistance here because we have a head and shoulders like structure, but we could try to invalidate this if we break past 814 in my personal opinion. So watch resistance on Supermicro. Could go a little bit higher again and try to retest the 800 area. We'll see if we could break that to get up to 820. So I'll be watching this very carefully. We do have some tight resistance and watch to see if the head and shoulders plays out. If he gets a big rejection, loses 750, look for a big dip all the way back down. But this all depends on how it ends up performing relative to the market. In my personal opinion, it looks like it might actually push a little higher because the 4 hour is looking pretty good. So I'm going to see some sideways price action here and maybe a little bit of more upside, at least temporarily, is the most likely possibility. And we'll watch and see how it reacts to resistance. For Rivian, we also have earnings coming up for Rivian. So I wouldn't be surprised if this actually pushes a little bit higher. Shovels at 10, might dip a little bit, then start pushing higher again. 10.25 is a strong possibility. I think that we could see that on Rivian. For SoFi right here is kind of dipping a little bit, but we have resistance at about 7.04. We were calling a bounce, and SoFi is kind of playing out a bit, but this 20 EMA is kind of stubborn. So we have resistance at 7.04 and 7.19, not holding up that great, kind of shuffling. And our support is currently at 6.9. If that fails, 6.75 is coming next. I think we could dip a little bit towards 6.9 and try to rebound, and then we could end up trying to make our way back up towards the sevens. So that's going to be something worth noting. For the IWM Russell 2000, okay, we are trying to kind of push right over here. This is looking like it's showing some strength. And I think that there is potential for this to go a little bit higher. But this might grab liquidity again right here. This is where our previous support happened to be at 202 before it tries to push higher, and we eventually make our way up to about 204. So I do see more upside potential, at least for the short term, for the IWM Russell 2000. For AMD, we dipped really hard, but we're forming a very, very nice bullish divergence. Just look at the MACD right here. And I think that it's going to be approaching our 50 EMA at 153.8. So I do expect more upside is the most likely possibility. ARM, it's holding up nicely. Watch resistance at 103. If we break this, we're going to easily push up towards, in my personal opinion, the 105 area. If we lose 100, look for a bigger dip, but I do anticipate it's going to try to push higher. For Coinbase also has some upside potential. I am liking this chart right here. We're holding our EMAs nicely. It's going to likely retest the 220 zone. We have a lot of EMAs here, which are kind of attracting it. So I think it might dip a little bit, then try to rebound, and we could actually push back up towards the 230 area for a little dip and bounce. For Amazon, we're also holding up very, very nicely, trying to push higher. Going to be looking to see if this bullish divergence plays out. I also have noticed that there's potential for it to go all the way up to about 190. It might dip a little bit right here towards 185, maybe a little bit lower than that, then try to rebound. I think a push for 190 is going to be coming later on. So I see upside potential in Amazon. For Meta, we're looking bullish. It's trying to rebound right over here, going to be testing our 50 EMA. I see 457.87 being tested. If that breaks, we're easily pushing to the 460s. So watch 457.5 as resistance, then eventually the 460s are coming. For Microsoft, we're looking a bit more bullish. Going to be looking for a test of 410. 409.09 is going to be tested. It might come down a bit after testing it. Eventually try to push towards 410. I see, excuse me, I see some upside potential. For Google, Google's holding up very, very well, kind of shuffling right now. It's going to likely retest our 20 EMA at 167, then try to rebound, start pushing up towards 170. So I see some more upside potential for this. If we lose 164, we turn back to bearish, but it's not really doing that yet. So it might temporarily push up higher. The VIX, like I said earlier, is looking bearish. The VIX has this big gap to fill. I think the VIX is going to dip to fill that gap and enter the 12 area. And I think that that's going to happen because of SPY in the market pushing a little bit higher. But once again, guys, the VIX has a tendency of bouncing off the 12. Sometimes it could take a week. Sometimes it could take like 5 to 7 days. But eventually, the VIX will get a big bounce later on because the market's going to get a rejection soon. I'm not saying it's happening tomorrow. No, I'm not saying it's happening tomorrow. I'm saying that that's what the VIX kind of suggests. So for now, the market's going to likely go higher. The VIX is going to drop. But later on, maybe a week from now, maybe a few days later, when the VIX gets a big bounce back up towards at least 16 plus, right, the market's going to get a rejection. And that's kind of like what you've seen on this chart many times. We're not going to worry too much about the rejection yet. For now, the market's going to go a little higher. I'll talk more about any potential rejections later. Just know the market could go higher for now, and then we'll see what happens after that. The 10-year treasury yield is also dipping a little bit. We're approaching 4.45, and eventually, if that fails us, that's previous resistance becoming support. If we lose that, I could easily see this dipping closer to our 200 EMA, or at least get it very close to it. This imbalance right here is acting as our magnet. So the imbalance and the 200 EMA are kind of like attracting this to like the 4.4 area or lower, and that's actually bullish for the markets because of the things Jerome Powell said. And finally, the dollar index also looking a little bit more bearish. We have a very, very nice looking bearish divergence that developed on the dollar. So if you look at this right here, bearish divergence developed, and there is a chance this is going to dip a little bit lower, excuse me, a little bit lower towards 104.7 if we lose 105. So if we lose 105, look for a bigger dip. If we hold 105, it could change things for the markets, but I do see potential for this to dip lower. It looks kind of weak. So that suggests that there's likely more upside coming to the markets. So the charts look more bullish. SPY looks to me like it's going to push higher. So does Tesla and the others. But we'll have to wait and see how things go just to be safe. So please be very, very careful with what's coming out for the markets. Remember the economic data for tomorrow, and I'll see you guys very soon tomorrow morning. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a very, very awesome rest of your Sunday. Take care, guys, and I'll see you guys very soon. Thank you, and peace out.